Hi, and welcome to PowerViews. I'm Dan McDade, your host and president of PointClear. On PowerViews, I have the opportunity to talk to interesting and knowledgeable experts who offer solutions to some of today's toughest marketing and sales challenges. My guest today is Ardath Albee. Ardath is a B2B marketing strategist and the CEO for firm Marketing Interactions, Inc. She applies over 28 years of business management and marketing experience to help companies with complex sales create e-marketing strategies that use contagious content platforms to turn prospects into buyers. Her book, E-Marketing Strategies for the Complex Sale, was published by McGraw-Hill. I also found this quote from Ardath that I think you will enjoy. Writing for business and spinning fiction isn't all that different if you have an open mind. I love woman's fiction, the stories, the characters, and the emotional attachment. What I've learned over the years is that weaving fictional stories can help writers across the boundary to the other side of writing content for businesses that people actually want to read. So Ardath, I'll start out by asking you, when are you going to be writing 50 Shades of E-Marketing?
If only. I'll tell you, writing is a big love of mine. It's a big passion for me, and I've always done it. And I use, obviously, a ton of it in the work I do. So,
yeah. Well, I've been working on a novel now for about 12 years, so hopefully one of these days I'll get enough time to actually put some time into it and finish it. I'm about 60% done now. So anyway, thank you. Welcome to PowerViews. I wanted to maybe start out with just kind of a general question about, what changes you've seen in sales and marketing so far this year.
Well, it's interesting. Actually, what I am seeing is a look toward customer retention more, which I haven't seen for a lot of years past because the main focus has been net new logos, net new leads, and business. So it's nice to see a resurgence of customer retention. But the other reason I think it's so important is because I think it's one area where marketing can actually gain some quick wins. Right? You may have a 2.5 to 3 year sales cycle, which many of my clients do have, but with customer retention, you have the opportunity to make a difference much faster, right? As different customers renew and even buy more, so through cross and upsell. By the same token, I'm seeing marketers start to take a look at account-based marketing programs, not just from the sales perspective of named accounts, but from the perspective of narrowing their focus to people who could actually buy from them, not just somebody who may meet the demographic lead scoring criteria. So, are they actually from a company who could buy from them? And it's slow, and I think it's very early stages, but I think it's becoming more and more important to focus on quality rather than quantity, and I think we're seeing some movement, but still we have to change the way we grade performance to see that happening.
Yeah, and I would assume that you would expect that same kind of move going into 2014. I guess what else is believe it or not, we're close to wrapping up 2013. What do you see in 2014 that will be different, do you think?
Oh, that's a hard question. One of the things that I heard when I was at Content Marketing World last week was, people making comments about content marketing 101. And so I think we're moving beyond that. I think people have got the gist of it. And in fact, the calls that I'm getting lately are, okay, look, we bought into this idea. We've created great content. We've published it. We've put it out there, and the needle's not moving. What's wrong? And so what I see coming up next is this realization that they need a strategy. It's not just about publishing content and putting it out there. It actually needs to help people do something that turns into business. And so, without a strategy, that's not going to happen. People are just going to read it, they may share it, but then they go away and they don't actually end up doing business with you. So somehow there has to be a strategy that helps content actually do its job.
And I guess also a balance between inbound marketing and outbound marketing. I heard somebody the other day call it all-bound marketing, which I actually kind of liked.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree. And, I think one of the biggest points now with all the channels and the social and the, marketing automation and everything else is that it's actually all nurturing. So if you think about it, if you're engaging somebody that you don't actually know about in your database through social media channels with your content, you are nurturing them, right? So you better be doing it right. It better be good content, But I mean, every time you come in contact or your content comes in contact with somebody, whether you know them or not, you're nurturing them. So I think it shines a light on the importance of content and the fact that just throwing out any old content is not going to be effective.
Yeah, you and I had some email correspondence back at the time that you published the Why Bant is Bunk for Today's B2B Buyer, which I had a great time with. I think that was just a great title. And, you talked a little bit about, why Bant is bunk in your opinion, but you also provided what you call dynamic criteria, which I guess includes need, connections, and company. And I wondered if you wanted to talk just a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of interviews with salespeople during the persona creation process for clients and that kind of thing, and there are so many of them that are still so hepped up on Bant. And it just made me mad that day because it's just not true. And so what happens is during the course of doing all this research to create personas, what we really realize is that a lot of the purchases made are not budgeted. They're not. Companies aren't preparing for them because things change so fast. Probably during the budget preparation, that problem wasn't even thought about or known they could solve it, or in the radar or whatever. The people who sign off on deals do not have the time to do the research, right? So they're assigning the research and recommendations to staff, and if you overlook them, then what do you have? Because that C-level person doesn't want to talk to you. They don't have time. Yeah. And so until the point that they're evaluating a short list and they actually make the time, if we're not engaging the people who are creating that short list, are we going to be on it? I mean, really,
Yeah.
And so, I think it's who's connected. Now, that doesn't mean that just anybody who's, looking at your company is a potential lead. What it means is, who's that person's boss? Could they possibly be researching this purchase for their boss? Is it somebody who has some involvement in the project, maybe from a different perspective? They may not be the one who can buy, but if they say, no, I hate that, you're out. So who else do you have to influence? So it's a variety of different influence levels, and the research shows that buying committees are expanding in B2B. They're bringing, asking for more input. They're bringing more users into the conversation. And so we have to be willing to address that. So we have to look at, influence level. We have to look at how they're connected within the company, and then the company itself. Can they actually buy from you? Mm-hmm. Would they actually buy from you? Mm-hmm. Do they look like your customers now? Or are you wasting your time? And so I think there are, a number of ways that this plays to both marketing and sales. And I think if we get on the same page with each other on this, that, things will be a lot better and sales will be a lot more productive.
I also add, should they buy from you? If they could buy from you, and if they would buy from you, but they shouldn't buy from you, usually you should be qualifying on that basis too.
Right, that's true. Good point.
When you talk to salespeople, and this is I know this is going to be a difficult question to answer, but when you talk to salespeople, is there any consistency on their response to so-called marketing leads and the percent of business that they have to find versus the percent of business that's provided to them by the company?
Well, most salespeople think marketing is ineffective, right. And you probably know that.
Yep.
So I think the interesting factor for me is that they're actually interested in, being interviewed to help marketing get better. They're mm-hmm. actually really excited to share their thoughts. They really provide a lot of input that's valuable. They come up with ideas with things they might need. I do also have some instances where they say, well, marketing isn't going to do anything to help me, so I don't care.
Right.
Yeah. But the other thing that I find is that salespeople say they need help. They need better content to use to engage the people they're speaking to, but they also need a better setup from marketing for the conversations that they have. So we really need to think about, are we engaging the kind of people that your salespeople can go in and have good conversations with, so that they can, get that buyer to do, say, or give whatever it takes for the next step to happen. Mm-hmm. I think by the same token, marketing's pushing out a ton of content, boatloads of it, and they're expecting salespeople to use it. Well, salespeople aren't going to even read it. So they don't know that it exists. And so one of the things I've helped my clients do is create what I call content cliff notes, right? So very brief summary, key points made, what persona or role the content's designed for, and in which situation or in answer to which question would it be most effective. And that way salespeople can skim through the content, find something that might work, review it quickly, and share it. Mm-hmm. And, it's helping in the uptake of content getting used. And it's helping them understand that marketers are doing the work and they are creating more relevant content. I still find that marketers tend to create content for the front end of the funnel and not the back end of the process. So there needs to be some work done there. And I think there's a lack of understanding that the back end or the tail end of the buying process doesn't need to be just all about products. It still has to be about what the products enable, but maybe from a customer experience scenario where they can see how companies like themselves are getting the promised results. And I think many companies' case studies suck, to be quite blunt about it, and it's because they're all about them. And so it's kind of like, here's the company background, here's the products we implemented, and here's the great results they got. No, tell me about what do they need it for, what problems were encountered along the way, how did they actually get the true value, how much work did they have to do to get it, where did you provide expertise, those kinds of things so that people can actually evaluate the process. But I think I got off track here.
No, that was good, and I appreciate that. I think people are anxious to hear your view and other, kind of knowledgeable folks' view on, what exactly is sales thinking. So I think it's really valuable input. So we've got more marketing and selling to current customers. We've got, what would you call it? Was like the content snapshot or the content? I love that term.
Oh, cliff notes.
Cliff notes. Okay, content cliff notes. So we've got those two things. What else would you recommend as marketing and sales executives move from 2013 into 2014?
Well, here's the thing that I think bugs me the most. I do a lot of work on the marketing side, and I'm just now starting to have organizations agree that it needs to extend onto the sales side. And the problem I have with this is that marketers are now, whether they like it or not, telling the story longer through the process, right? Because buyers are holding salespeople at bay, they're doing their own research, whatever the reasons, right? The problem I have is that if marketing and sales aren't working together, then the stories don't connect. So sales actually has no idea of the story marketing is told to the point at which they get the handoff, and get into the conversation. So they start it from God knows where, right? From where they want to start it.
Right.
And if the person or the buyer has been involved with marketing for a long period of time and has been told a lot of the story, salespeople are either starting from a place that they have already been, which is redundant, or they've jumped ahead and they're starting someplace where the buyer isn't ready to think about, or they're starting from ground zero, which really, wastes time. But somehow without the two connected, then the story becomes fragmented, right? The experience for the buyer becomes fragmented. And I don't think that companies are realizing, what's happening as marketing evolves and sales in a lot of ways is trying to keep up, because it's not about products, it's about buyers, right? And what they care about. And so I think that there's a lot of change going on, and somehow we have to figure out how to manage that.
Yeah, one of the ways I put that, I don't know if you would agree with this, but in a buying process or a sales process, there's finding a pain or need, getting agreement that there's pain or need, agreeing to a generic solution, agreeing to a customized specific solution, and then obviously, agreeing to move forward. And unfortunately what happens is sales starts at step 5 and marketing ends at step 1. So there's a lot of, room in there that isn't really being covered by the current sales process.
Well, I think that's true, and there are still a lot of marketing organizations that think that once they get that form completion, then their job is done.
Yeah.
And that person gets pushed over to sales, whether ready or not, and so there's a big hole. And so the middle of that buying process is critical, and we need to start addressing that story.
Yeah, that's my biggest frustration, because that's what we see every day, and that's the business we're in. So we can solve that problem, but people have to. It's like I was telling somebody yesterday that how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? It only takes one, but the light bulb really has to want to change. So, well, what have we missed? What are you working on, or what are you excited about? What have we missed in our discussion today?
Oh, I'm working on a new book, which I'm not ready to talk about yet.
But it's not 50 Shades of e-marketing, I guess.
No, not 50 Shades of anything. Although, that's interesting. We can think about that. But what I really am excited about is some of the sales enablement, and I hate that term, so I'm calling it marketing to sales process, right? So I just wrote a piece over on Demandbase about marketing to sales architecture, right, and how to rejigger the relationship, if you will, to make it work better together, because I really think that without that, we're going to all have trouble moving forward. And so I think we really have to figure this out. I mean, ever since I can remember, and I've been in business for a long time, as you have, is this issue with marketing and sales alignment.
Yeah.
Well, now that there's so much of it done digitally, which is out of our view, if you will, to a large extent. I mean, we may see that they clicked, but we can't see the reaction on their face, or what they thought, or what they said about it to their friends or peers or colleagues. So I think without figuring out how to coordinate this process and work well together, I think we're in a world of trouble. And I think we really have to figure it out. And I would argue that now with social selling, salespeople are inserting themselves into the process at the same time marketing is involved. So there's the potential of true conflict within channels. Do you know what I mean? If marketing
Sure.
is telling one story and sales is jumping in with something totally different. And quite often the interpretations of marketing and the interpretations of sales about the products they sell for the same company are a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a huge potential here, a huge opportunity to really architect a marketing sales process that works well together. And I don't know what that's going to take, probably some Herculean effort.
Yeah, hopefully within our lifetime. I know this is a tough question to answer, but so much of the time you read out there that 70% of the buying process is done before a sales rep even needs to get involved, and I find that I find personally that I disagree with that, because if you're talking about, say, an enterprise solution that's a relatively high ticket item, if you wait until the company has done 70% of the research, then the chances are greater that you're going to be out in the cold than ever having a chance of being shortlisted. I wonder if what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, well, I agree 100%. And so here's the deal. Buyers don't care whether they're talking to marketing or sales. They care about the value they're getting in return. So I would argue that sales needs to be in the conversation much sooner, but they need to be in the conversation talking about, what the product enables, not the product, not the feeds and speeds. They need to be talking about, helping the buyer set the vision for how are they going to get to their objective, what it's going to look like when they solve that problem or whatever. And that's not going to happen unless this marketing to sales process gets solved, right? Because they need to work with marketing. But marketers are now doing a better job of inserting inside sales into the earlier process. The problem I have with it is that most times they're not using inside sales in a way that adds value to the conversation, if you will. They're kind of concerned about, can we qualify this lead so we can give it to sales?
Right.
I would say that this whole process needs to become dynamic and fluid, all focused on value, and that everybody needs to be involved at the same time. So this strange construct that says that, buyers make their way 58% or 70%, depending on which research, right? Their way through the buying process without sales is a bunch of hooey, because does the buyer really care and say, oh, that's a marketing person. Okay, I'll take a look at their content. Oh, that's sales. No, I'm not talking to them. Not really.
No.
They're saying, where am I going to get the most value for the time and effort I invest in accessing this information or this conversation, right? So isn't it up to us to become more valuable?
Absolutely. Do you find that, I'll put it this way, we find that more senior executives don't give up their digital body language as easily as more junior executives. So it's much tougher to get a reading and a grade or a score on them than it is on more junior buyers. So as a result, if you focus too exclusively on inbound marketing, then you could end up with kind of smaller deals with lower level decision makers. I'm not saying all the time, but as a somewhat of a generalization, that's at least what we found with our clients.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's because they don't have a lot of time to spend doing that.
Yep.
So even though some of them say they use social media now and some may follow along, they're not invested in actually spending the time with the information that somebody that they've assigned lower down to do the research and make the recommendations is. I think they do it to keep their pulse, their finger on the pulse of what's happening, maybe. But but I would disagree slightly with the getting involved with lower level people, meaning smaller deals. Because I think the lower level people, well, it depends on how low you go, but the lower level people are the ones doing the research to recommend it up to their bosses, right? And then we're going to buy the bigger solutions.
Right.
So, and I'm seeing that in, some of my clients sell $1 million solutions, and I'm seeing it there too, So it's not just, I think it's valuable if they have the connections, and if they work for a company who could really use your product to benefit. But I think we need to look at things a little differently. And I think if we design our content and the interactions, the buyer experience, to reflect what the buyer's interested in, it gives us a better way of assessing, are they really serious? Are they kicking tires? Are they far enough through the buying process that if we can, create a value-added conversation, we're going to get somewhere? Those kinds of things. And that, in a lot of ways, because of all the digital involvement, you have to create a way so that the activity out there tells you something that's useful.
Yeah.
And so I know Steve made the digital body language thing very popular, but it's true in a way. You need to be able to, I find it's more of an intellectual practice than body language, but you need to be able to figure out based on what they're showing interest in, where they are in that buying process. And the only way you can do that is if you have a strategy that helps you create content designed to show you where they are and to move them to next steps, right? So it's all really interesting. I think it's one of the most exciting times ever to be doing this work.
I do too, and particularly since the climate's improved a little bit since 2008, it's a little more exciting time to be in business, I think, than some of the drudgery days of 5 years ago. Ardath, how can our audience get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out and learn more?
Well, they can visit my website at marketinginteractions.com. They can follow me on Twitter at Ardath421, or they can message me on LinkedIn at Ardath Albee.
Okay, well, great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed our conversation. And for now, this is Dan McDade signing off on another edition of PowerViews. Thank you for watching.